Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second episode of AWS She Builds Tech Skills North America. For those of you who were not able to join our last episode, my name is Claire Holly, and I lead a team of solution architects out in the Northeast, specifically New York City. So during our last segment, we actually introduced the whole concept of she bills and how it originated, but we didn't get a chance to tell you a little bit more about North America. So here at North America, we actually have a team. Look, we have to move over to the side so you can see them. We actually have a team of SAs that act solution architects who will also be hosts. So you won't just be working with Andrea and I. Will also have the pleasure of meeting Candice, Bavisha, Raj, Tamara, and Yusra. So our crowd is we are continuing to expand. We have all areas of North America, including the West Coast, East Coast, Central, and Canada. So today we actually have Bavisha, and Bavisha is actually going to be our moderator. So therefore, if you have any questions at all, please feel free, put them in the chat, and she'll definitely be able to address them. So now I'm going to introduce my lovely host, Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you again. We're super excited to be here. And with that said, I am a solutions architect leader. I'm based out of New York City. And wanted to kind of just go touch base a little bit about, how you can go and navigate and learn and upskill yourself in cloud technology. And I'm sure a lot of our viewers are different stages in their cloud journey. So for those very young people, think of yourself as, if you're watching this and you're in the third grade to 12th grade, and you look to, pursue maybe education in the STEM field and you want to get inspired, there's many different ways you can get started. One of the things that you could do is, and we'll make sure Vavisha posts the links here on the chat as well, but one of the things you could do is Hour of Code. So for those who wonder, what is Hour of Code? So the Hour of Code is a 1 hour long introduction to computer science, and is really there to design to demystify coding. So we gamify ways that you can learn how to code. And this is usually an event that is organized through local schools and communities. So if you say have a local school, right, you can find out or you can visit the website and see where the closest location is. If you're a parent or it's someone who would love to maybe introduce young people in your community to computer science, you can also participate as a volunteer. So there's more information on how you can do that. The other aspect of it is a similar program called Girls Who Code. And Girls Who Code is also a kind of program for young girls. I would say like third graders to 12th graders. And it's really there to inspire, educate, and equip young girls with computer skills to pursue maybe education in the STEM field. And they bring in presenters and speakers, and some of these are engineers, they're developers, they're executives to come and sort of motivate young girls. If you're a young person watching this, the way you can get participate, and we'll make sure Bavisha shares the link as well, is you can actually sign up for one of their boot camps. It's free of cost, and there's lots of different locations that you could register for. Or if you're someone in the field of technology and you want to participate, you can also participate as a volunteer to deliver these sessions to young people. Okay. And then the second part of that is, imagine yourself that, you are someone out in the field that may not have had the background in IT or never touched cloud technology. So you wonder, like, how do I get started? So Amazon Web Services, we ourselves have various different foundational classes that you can register for and you can do for free of cost. And we'll make sure the links are there too. This is a good starting point. The one I'm referring to, or the one I'm thinking of, is you can become a cloud practitioner. So these are foundational understanding of cloud technology concepts, different services, the terminologies to get started. So I think that's a really good one for those who don't have an IT background or don't necessarily have the cloud experience, and great for executives as well. But for those who are sort of professionals and have dealt with technology, they're in the IT field, A good starting point, specifically learning Amazon and the ecosystem, is the AWS Certified Solutions Architect Associate certification. And that one kind of deals a little bit more about, the different services that we have, different technologies, how you can develop best practice architectures, how you can make sure that these architectures follow best practices. There's a bunch of free classes and courses that you can register for as well, and there's exams that you can take. All the training is free. I think for the practitioner and the associates, the certifications cost though. Just you could read more about them, but I think depending on where you are, you need to pay for them. So that's to give you a little bit feel for, where do you get started? How do you wrap your head around, educating yourself and getting up to speed?
And I guess one of the questions we kind of want to know from our viewers is, where exactly are you on your cloud journey? I mean, do you mind sharing with us and putting it in the chat so we can understand that? Along those lines, too, one of the great things is that, let's say that sometimes we know some people, they have taken off a year or two from work. AWS actually has a returnship program, in which case you could take off a year and you can actually go through and actually become a solution architect. So, I mean, there's a lot of great programs we can take a look at. If you're a recent college graduate, they actually have a Tech U program. So, again, various opportunities, and we'll definitely share those links in there.
Awesome. Great. Any responses, Claire, from our audience around where they are in the cloud journey? Maybe we could take a look.
We have an AWS preferred partner. So one of them, Praxma, I'm looking for a career change. And you also have kids. I have kids as well. I would definitely look at that returnship program. Definitely look into that and see. And we can actually post that link for you.
Awesome. So for this session, for this episode, if you recall, just rewind 2 weeks from back, Liz Dennett, who is a VP of Data Architecture and Data Engineering at Wood Mackenzie, walks us through a very interesting use case around using satellite images to predict supply and demand of liquefied natural gas. And then they track also efficiencies of these compressor trains. So what we want to do in this episode is really dive deep into the technology to understand what's behind this. So we are super excited to have Connor Boyle. He's a principal data architect at Wood Mackenzie, join us to walk us through this architecture of She Builds Tech Skills, North America. And I'm here with Claire, who's one of my co-hosts, as well as Connor Boyle from Wood Mackenzie. Hi, Connor. Welcome to our show.
Hi. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And, welcome everyone, all the viewers. We're here to dive deep into the technology specific to the discussion we had in our last episode, where Liz walked us through, the kind of the use case called the LNG model, which essentially focuses on predicting supply and demand on liquefied natural gas and how they can drive compressor train efficiencies by insights and data and ways that they can provide that insight to the consumer that they can make decisions on. So what we thought we'd do in this episode is really dive deep into the technology and learn from Connor as to what that entails. But with that said, Connor, you're a principal data architect. Walk us through kind of what is that role, what does it entail? And also maybe you could talk about what your background is and how that kind of naturally, organically brought you to where you are now.
Absolutely, yeah. So as part of my role, I help the organization to break down data silos, and that's done through data architecture best practices, whilst fostering a culture of data-driven reliability, observability, and automation. I've been passionate about data for a long time. My passion for data actually stems from when I was at high school, all those years ago, although I tell myself it wasn't really that long ago. And back then there was a question in the course that was on normalization, so some data modeling, and that question was worth the most amount of marks in the exam. So it's something that I actually had to get good at back then to get a good grade. And then that data career pathway is something I followed through studying information systems at university, and then working in data roles in the workplace.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So we understand, Connor, that for this LNG modeling workload, you pretty much leverage a lot of AWS services. Could you walk us through this architecture and tell us a little bit about the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So on the right-hand side, we've got our external client in the grey there. So the data that we're providing, although we're actually capturing images on the left with the satellites, the data that we're providing to the clients is textual in nature, and that contains information, data, sorry, on if the train, so the unit that pulls down the gas, is on or off. So on the left-hand side of our diagram, we've got the satellite, and we've got, I think, access to about 4 satellites, and they're orbiting the Earth, and they're taking images of these LNG assets that we're interested in. And that those files have been saved down in an S3 bucket, and then some machine learning is taking place to process those images and make sense of them, so that we can see if those trains that are in the LNG plants are on or off. And once that takes place, this gets published to an SNS topic, which we consume that data from. So we receive a message. That message contains where the location of the file is, and that message tells us that that file is ready, and then we go and grab it from that account by assuming role.
I see. And you said 4 satellites. What's the frequency of the data you collect, and also, how much data are we talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So we call this data near time. So we get about 2 images of a plant per week, and we have about 35 plants that we're capturing at the moment. Now, those plants can have more than 1 train within them. So an example, one plant could have 6 trains. So the volumes of data that we're capturing here are not massive, but I think it makes for a really interesting data set at the same time.
Are we leveraging multiple accounts here? Because
yes, that's correct. Yeah. So on the left-hand side, in that box, the bounded context there, we've got the account that the satellite data is coming into, and then on the right-hand side, we've got where we're doing our processing of that data with Mac. So we assume role to grab those files, and then we process them using some lambdas.
I see. And you mentioned the SQS, right? Some queuing system, simple queuing system. Yep. Can you walk us through kind of how does that cross-account connectivity work?
Yeah. So once we receive that notification, and we get that, we then trigger a lambda to go and grab that file. So we assume role. So we use IAM. We assume role, and we hit across. And grab that image, and we save that down in an S3 bucket. So we've got the ingestion lambda here, and once that's saved down, we then join that to some of the data that's within the rest of our data estate to enrich that data.
I see. And then on the database side, so you grab it, you put it in the database. Walk us through. Are you combining it with other data sources too, or is
yeah. So part of WoodMac, the benefits of WoodMac is the vast amount of data that we have, and that allows us to really enrich the existing products that we have in LNG with this data. So we're joining that to existing data sources that we have for LNG plants, but also some reference data so that we have consistent statuses. We receive names of the LNG trains and the LNG plants from the satellite, but we don't want to provide those names to our clients. We want to change them and use the ones that we supply in our existing products, so that our clients can make sense of the data. It's easier for them to use. And then after we've enriched that data, we save it down in a Postgres Aurora RDS instance.
What does your data hygiene process look like? Because I mean, you're pulling it through multiple sources. There must be some type of a transformation that you're getting, that you're putting it into Aurora and then providing it to your end users. What does that hygiene process look like?
Yeah. So we have some data validation stuff going on. So the easiest data validation you can do is a schema. So we have a schema that this aligns to once we get satellite data into our estate. So that's the first thing that we do. The next thing we do is we check that data. So we look at the statuses. So is it on or off, or perhaps it could say it's cloudy or unknown. And if we get a status that we've never seen before, then we flag that and we pause that data going through the rest of the data pipeline, just to ensure that our clients are always receiving the highest quality data.
And then what made you land into sort of using a Postgres SQL for kind of as the main data, I guess, database?
Yeah, so we went for RDS Aurora Postgres. So a couple of reasons for this. One is that Aurora allows us to scale. So as this data grows over time, we can scale, and there may be future satellite analytics products that we generate and would use this data store. There's also some, this data also fits this technology, and also fits the access pattern, just with the shape and the characteristics and the frequency. And then there's also a resiliency piece in here as well. So this is a multi-availability zone deployment, so that we've got some resiliency baked in there as well.
It's funny, you touched upon exactly my next question. I mean, resiliency is a big thing for our customers. Everyone wants to understand about how you architecting for resiliency, how you architecting for high availability. So you mentioned Aurora. Are we using the serverless component of Aurora?
Yes, yeah, we're serverless, yeah, absolutely. And that comes with lots of good reasons. So, maintenance and that ability to scale as well through time. And like you said, the resiliency is part of the well-architected, was one of the pillars of the well-architected framework. There's another piece in here on sustainability. So we don't want to be using compute in the cloud that we don't want to pay for, because we're not using the full extent of the capabilities. And two, it allows us to consider that carbon footprint of that as well, which I know is one of the more recent additions to the pillars in AWS.
Makes sense. And to close the loop, then, how do you present this data, combined data, or I'd say normalized, or say, cleansed data to the consumer?
Yeah, so we flatten this data out and then we provide it to our clients via an API. So the data that the clients get contains some observation dates. So when was when is this observation from? What's the status? What's the plan? What is the train? When the next forecasted observation is going to be.
I see. How do you secure this environment, Connor? Can you walk us through the security components of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So everything's encrypted and stored at rest and in transit. We've got tight IAM roles here. Security is really important, and we also use metadata to drive some security policies that we have on our data. So with satellite data, you get a truly global perspective, but that can also become dangerous because of the extent of the things that the images that you can capture. So we lock that stuff down. We use metadata to say, this file contains data for these countries and these assets, therefore that has a different set of restrictions, just to keep our data safe and our people safe.
Got it. What about any type of future enhancements? Are you guys looking towards using machine learning, AI? What do you think about that for this current architecture?
Yeah, so we've got some machine learning stuff used for processing the images, and it's something we consider on the data quality side, especially as we think about future products and what they could look like that may be more complex than on or off statuses. And we would want to look at the variability in that data to then trigger if a role needs to be looked at. So it's definitely on the cards for the future.
I see. And then also data retention. Do you store this data for a period of time, or do you have to kind of get rid of it to make room for new data? Can you speak?
No, we don't. Partly thanks to the architecture and that ability to scale. But with this data, it's important to be able to have that historical data and see the trends through time, especially for our clients. And we're very lucky that the terms and conditions of this data allow us to keep that. There's no PII data or anything going on, or any GDPR stuff with this. It's a nice piece.
Wow, Connor, this was a lot of information, and it was really great. It's nice to see how Wood Mackenzie is definitely innovating and making an impact in the energy space using that LNG modeling. We also it's very interesting to hear how you're leveraging satellite analytics in order to do your transformation for your end users. I mean, we're hoping that when you guys go to your next future stateware analytics, we can definitely have you back on to be another guest as well and learn more about some of the other innovative projects that you guys are doing at Wood Mackenzie. Wow, that was actually great. I thought that Connor did a great job of going through that whole concept. I know Liz went through explaining what was that business case around the empathetic architecture. It will always drive me crazy saying that. But I think he did a great job of capturing it. And we kind of want to dive a little bit deeper on the tech side and get some of your feedback as well. Before we do that, our moderator, Bavisha, she's actually going to share a couple of links about the company. As you can see, Wood Mackenzie is definitely innovating in that satellite energy space. So you definitely want to be, if you're looking for opportunities, we'll be able to share some of those links. We'll also share some of the blog posts that they actually have produced as well. So therefore, keep an eye out in the chat. And if you have any questions, please let us know. In the meantime, Andrea, why don't you tell us a bit about what resonated with you the most from that video?
Yeah, 100%. I thought it was really cool to hear Connor kind of dive deep into the architecture. What was interesting and stood out to me is when he said we're using serverless, often you hear customer using serverless because they want to eliminate undifferentiated heavy lifting with bless you.
Sorry. Yeah, it's live, everybody. It's live.
100%. It's not scripted. Yeah. So they use remove undifferentiated heavy lifting. But what Connor said that stood out to me was, that they didn't want to use resources that they didn't need because they're mindful of their carbon footprint, reducing carbon footprint. I think sustainability is something that we see brought up in conversations very often. And a lot of CEOs and executives do care about carbon footprint and reducing that, right? So I think that was what stood out to me, really, Claire. And so I posed the same question to you. What did you find interesting? What was your takeaway from the conversation?
I think the fact that they're leveraging event-driven architectures, and what I mean by that is that we're seeing a trend where a lot of our customers are utilizing those event-driven architectures. And for those of you who are not familiar, event-driven architectures, they're basically a modern design approach centered around data that describes events. So pretty much it's something that happens. Just think about when you press a button or when you swipe a card. And the approach is really to remove that whole monolithic concept, right? You want to go about decoupling your services. And pretty much the great thing about it is that if a service fails, the rest will be able to continue. So that's the key thing, because that allows you to innovate faster. You're not having to wait on those synchronous responses, which can then take time and create latency. So therefore, it allows our customers now to be able to experiment faster, as well as to be able to get things out to market very quickly. And that's what you can see that what Mackenzie is actually doing. They're leveraging that by the whole concept of going from the satellite imagery and then be able to modify it, do some transformation with it, and then provide new content for their customers. So I guess I want to pose that question to the audience. I mean, what exactly resonated with you? Do you mind sharing that information in our chat so we can actually hear?
Awesome. So while we wait for the audience to post their question, I'm super excited to say that we have Liz here on the studio. So Liz, if you can come back on, we met you 2 weeks. There you go. Hi, great to see you.
Hello. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. So fun fact, it is 10:24 at night. I'm actually calling in from Edinburgh, Scotland today, and we had a fantastic day doing an on-site data architecture and data engineering team building event. And tomorrow we get to spend the entire day whiteboarding, and I am so pumped.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Listen, we can't thank you enough for taking time. I know you're out traveling for business and taking time this late at night. But what we wanted to do is we had a couple of questions for you. And someone in your position, very inspiring, right? We heard your story, your background. What I wanted to ask you specifically, right? You're running a very large team, many different roles. walk us through, just from your viewpoint, how do you earn the trust of your technical team? Like, what has worked for you? Maybe you could share some personal stories.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And the first thing is trust has to be earned. It can't be given. And that someone once told me that people choose their leaders. They're not told who their leaders are. And it's so, so true. A few things that have helped me to earn my trust, especially since, my team is incredible. They can design systems around me all day, every day. One of the big things is showing up with technical knowledge to the table. You both teed up AWS certifications at the top of this event. I have 5 active certifications right now, including my SA Professional. That goes a huge way in helping both build my confidence and earn trust. Even if I'm in a meeting where maybe I'm not being as crisp with my language as I want, or I'm not using the right words necessarily, I do, if you remember from the last episode, of a non-tech background. Having those as formal credentials under my belt can really help to make sure that whoever I'm talking with, we have a common lexicon, and we both know that we've taken and invested the time in learning about the AWS tech stack and can come at it from the same perspective. The other top tip is honesty. If you don't know something and you know that you don't know it, don't bluff your way to it and don't fake it. Some of my best mentors I've ever had, even at AWS, have said, listen, technically you can run circles around me, and that's awesome. It should be that way. I want to help you, and these are the skills I bring to the table. Some of the worst managers I've ever had have tried to talk at me about technology, getting things like MongoDB and Postgres confused or switched, or not even understanding the difference between non-relational and relational databases. So own it, be authentic, fake the confidence till you make it. Don't fake your knowledge of technology.
Wow. I guess along those lines, because we do have various people joining our stream in their career. So what advice would you give to women entering the tech field, and anything that you wish you would have known back then that you know now?
So many things. A few just to name off the top of my head that come to mind first and foremost are have confidence in yourself. Find a community that you can connect with, whether it's people you connect with at meetups or online or on LinkedIn, whatever that looks like, but find people that let you feel like you can be yourself. For me, one of the big issues I had was that there aren't a lot of people that look and talk and act like me. And even at work, sometimes I show up and I have to code shift. There are stories I'm not sure, like, is this a work appropriate story? Can I tell this? We actually just had a happy hour tonight. And one of the stories I even led with, I'm not sure if this is a story that this is the correct audience for. It isn't anything to do with me and my behavior. It's something that happened to me. However, in the sake of vulnerability and sharing this experience, I want to err on the side of sharing it. How you make those lines and determine that is something that you just have to earn by trial and error and experiment with. And finding people that you can have those experiences with and have that emotional vulnerability and psychological safety is a huge, huge place. Another big thing is I'm asked a lot about how I combat biases in the tech industry, and we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours, both about our unique experiences, probably some of our shared experience, and also what is out there in the primary literature. I'm by no means an expert, but the first thing you can do is get educated. If you're, however you identify, if you're male, female, whatever your gender, your sexual orientation is, wherever you come from, get educated about the research and the data that's out there, about the just statistics, about how much people make, how likely people are to be promoted, about unconscious bias, about subconscious bias, about all of the things that systematically work for and against other people, just so you can check your own bias. And even if it's something that maybe doesn't necessarily impact you, you can know ways to be more of an ally. I have found that also helps, because then when you see behaviors that are good or are helpful, you can call them out. There was a specific example with someone on my team where I called them out for being an ally. And they were like, what do you mean? I'm not an ally. And I specifically called out 1 or 2 things they had done that were like champion allyship, and they weren't even aware of it. But making the space to call them out and celebrate them, especially within a larger team commitment, can also help and be a good harbinger of the behaviors that we should be celebrating as a community.
No, that's great. I mean, for our audience, do you guys have any questions for Liz? In parallel, what we would like to do is we also want to see who's been paying attention, right? Here goes the moment. Question of the day. That's what we call it. Question of the day. All right. So today's question is going to be, can you tell us at least 3 of the serverless services that was utilized in the solution that was provided by Connor? So again, can you tell us at least 3 of the serverless services that were utilized in the architecture that Connor presented? Perfect. And Bhavisha already beat me to the punch. She already typed it in the Slack. Thank you so much, Bhavisha. So while we're waiting on that, I think we have some additional questions. Right, Andrea?
Yes. I think, I could certainly, unless there's anything on the chat, we can continue on. So I say, Liz, one question I have for you. I know we haven't scripted this, so you don't know what I'm going to ask you. So when you look for, say, a data engineer, principal architect, or, senior architect, like what are some skills that you're looking for? Just kind of give us a little bit about, what are you looking for from a potential candidate that you could potentially hire for your team?
Okay, great question. The number one thing is curiosity and the ability to teach themselves new skill sets, the ability to have examples of how they've had to connect separate pieces of information, they've had to bring separate stakeholders together, they've had to clear a path where there isn't a clear line forward. Notice that these are not knowledge of the AWS technology stack, a track record of being a data architect for the past 5 or 10 years. Those things are great. They're nice to haves, but someone that has an intuition for the data, that knows how to build systems, but that really has that fuel and that fire and that natural curiosity and is willing to just kindle that. The AWS leadership principles, for example, are a really solid example of how, if you have those principles as your North Star, that learn and be curious one, for instance.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, working at AWS, you see sparks in everyone, and that's something that we have shamelessly borrowed. Yeah. Because someone in the comment too mentioned that hard work isn't always the answer, and hard work is not always the answer, but curiosity and wanting to learn more 98% of the time is the answer. And if you're not willing to teach yourself new things and to learn new things, then that's something that you cannot teach.
That's great advice or inputs, and that's awesome. Thank you.
Also, while you were talking, this made me think, when I was at AWS, I actually wrote a blog post about slaying imposter syndrome with AWS certifications, about my journey to try to get my SA professional certification, coming from a non-tech background in like 3 months. I got it. It was a brutal journey. I'll post that in the chat, though. It has some tips and tricks that might help if you're looking at getting some certifications.
That's fantastic.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent.
So I think we have a lot of great answers. And Bhavisha, hold us honest here. I don't know who posted.
Neither do I. We have a winner.
We have a winner.
That's actually great. And what you actually win is a $25 credit for AWS. So Bhavisha can actually Slack you. And I said Slack you. Look at me. It's been a long day, everybody, a very long day. But pretty much on Twitch, Bhavisha will be able to private message you and give you the information.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Zian. I hope I pronounced that correctly, but congratulations. Great. I think, for most people here, I think they got it right. It's a matter of just being quick.
Right.
So that's awesome. So with that said, Liz, as we wrap up, any final advice, suggestions, anything you want to pass on to the viewers?
Jump in there. Don't be afraid to just go in there, make mistakes, fail, interview, apply, rinse and repeat, do it again and again. There's not one road that looks the same for everyone. Don't let perfect get in the way of good or what your journey looks like. The last thing I wanted to touch on too is one of the questions that we may or may not have scripted is there was one about if I ever struggle with confidence. And that is something that just reflecting on that, the answer is absolutely 1,000% yes. Every individual I know that's doing anything challenging and hard in the tech space struggles with confidence. It ebbs and flows. There's seasons with more, there's seasons with less. And so if you're out there and you're feeling massive imposter syndrome, or you're feeling like things are just not coming together, you are absolutely not alone. It is something that I struggle with all of the time, more than you probably know. And I reckon that the vast majority of us do. So in a moment of authenticity, I just wanted to call that out before we hang up as well.
Yeah, thanks for those wise words.
And that's I'm glad you mentioned that, Liz, because that's often a big thing here, that oftentimes people, especially women, they also feel that imposter syndrome. And it's great to hear that someone, especially of your stature and your journey, also has that as well. So it's great. Thank you for sharing that with our viewers.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you think like, oh, as soon as I make it to AWS or I get hired, I'll make it. Then I'll know that I make it, and I'll feel like, and you make it. I made it to AWS, and was like, wow. So now I'm just an imposter with people where the bar is this much better. And then like you get in there, you go through the promotion cycle, and like even if you pull through, you're like, well, I managed to fool everyone, and now I'm like the worst of this class. And it can definitely be a self-perpetuating feedback cycle. And even every time you take on a new challenge, take on a new role, even thinking about taking on a new role, if you're not scared, right? One of my things is if you're not scared, you're not doing something worthwhile. But with that comes ability to have a pep talk and figure out how you talk yourself out, talk yourself down from that cliff.
And I was just about to say, the great thing when we think about the imposter syndrome is that we feel it, but other people will show you that you're not an imposter, because they can see the greatness in you, but sometimes you don't see the greatness in yourself. So it's always great to have those additional people by you that are your champions, that will always give you that feedback to let you realize that, no, you are amazing and you're doing what you're supposed to do here. Yeah. So great. Thank you.
Awesome. I actually recorded a podcast on this. I'll post that in the comments too, just about pivoting careers, some about additional stuff about my journey, and some more tips that may or may not help. Your mileage may vary, as we love to say at the AWS sphere.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. So just kind of a teaser for next time. Guys, our next episode is going to be aired on November 29th. We're going to be at re:Invent, which is a AWS annual event that occurs in Las Vegas. And we're going to air live on that Tuesday, I think 11th, November 29th is a Tuesday. So we're going to be there with our kind of global team, She Builds Tech Skills global team. Liz, we see you at re:Invent as well. I know we're going to talk to you backstage, so looking forward to it. But with that said, I just wanted to thank you, Connor, with Mackenzie, for being part of this and for sharing your true amazing journey, leveraging technology to do very innovative things in the energy space. So I can't thank you enough. And I wanted to thank everyone who've had the opportunity to watch these series. Those who've dialed in today, we truly appreciate it. And we hope to see you on November 29th. Awesome. So with that said, have a great rest of your day wherever you are. And we talk to you soon and see you soon.
Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.